Hello everyone, this is Dr. Ian. For today, pag-aaralan naman natin kung paano ba natin i-differentiate yung deductive reasoning sa inductive reasoning. Noong nakaraan lesson natin na pag-aralan natin ang inductive reasoning na kung saan nagbabase tayo sa mga patterns para maka-arrive tayo sa ating conclusion, also known as conjecture. Now, kung meron tayong inductive, meron din tayong deductive reasoning. Now, ano ba ito at ano ba ang difference nitong dalawang pamamaraan ng ating pag-analyze ng ating mga statements sa geometry? Unahin natin ang definition ng deductive reasoning. So by definition, it is the process of proving a specific conclusion from one or more general statements. At yan ang kaiba niya sa inductive reasoning. And also, a conclusion that is proved true by deductive reasoning is called a theorem. So yan yung dalawang bagay na dapat natin tandaan about deductive reasoning is that it's based out of facts para makapag-arrive tayo sa ating conclusion at ang conclusion natin na na-produce gamit ang deductive reasoning ay tinatawag nating theorem. At kung re-reviewin natin ang inductive reasoning, ito yung pag-observe or observing patterns or examples and then using them to form a general conclusion that may or may not be true. So yan yung ating isang example ng ating inductive reasoning. Halimbawa, yung pattern natin is kapag binobola natin yung nanay natin, nakakahingi tayo ng mas malaking baon or allowance mula sa nanay natin. Pero again, it's not always true kasi minsan kahit bulahin natin siya, hindi pa rin tayo nabibigyan ng extrang baon. So, ang tinatawag sa process na yan, na sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, inductive reasoning na himas-himasin lang natin yung ating nanay ay mabibigyan na tayo ng malaki-laking pocket money or baon sa ilang pagkakataon. And another way of seeing inductive reasoning sa ating examples before is, let's say, a number pattern, 3, 6, 9, and 12. At kung ipe-predict natin kung ano yung susunod sa 12, we can say na ang number na susunod kay 12 ay 15 dahil nakikita natin sa pattern na multiples of 3 yung ating sequence of numbers. So yan yung deductive reasoning at yung inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is based out of pattern and then we arrive with a conjecture, which means a conclusion that's sometimes true and sometimes it's not true. Pero ang deductive reasoning, base ito sa facts at several statements para makabuo tayo ng conclusion. And to make it more easier to understand, pag-aaralan natin yung tinatawag nating law of detachment at ito yung isang pamamaraan kung paano natin ginagamit yung deductive reasoning. So sa law of detachment, if P then Q is a true conditional statement and P is also true, then Q is also true. So yan yung assumption natin na kung meron tayong conditional statement na kung saan ito ay true statement at alam na natin from our previous lessons kung kailan nagiging true or false ang conditional statement. So kung meron tayong true statement at yung ating hypothesis ay true, then yung ating conclusion will always be true. So paano natin to i-illustrate? Now let's use the law of detachment to make a true conclusion. So ang ating statement, if you shop at Save Market, you will save money. So in this law of detachment, we will assume that this particular conditional statement is a true statement and what we're going to do is to see if yung ating conclusion will also be a true conclusion. So yung ating hypothesis P is that you shop at Save Market at yung ating conclusion in this conditional statement would be that you will save money. So kung ang ating conditional statement na P then Q ay true statement, ibig sabihin yan, ang conclusion natin should always be true as well. And that is, you will save money, provided that our assumption na kapag nag-shop tayo kay Save Market, ay makakasave tayo ng pera. So yan yung isang paraan ng paggamit ng law of detachment, which is one of the many ways on how we use deductive reasoning in mathematics, specifically in geometry. Now, let's use this more or let's understand the law of detachment even more sa mga examples natin na susunod. So in this case, we need to determine whether each reasoning is valid using the law of detachment. So that means we will assume na yung ating conditional statement na P then Q ay true. Now, ito yung ating initial statement. If any student gets an A on a final exam, then the student will pass the course. So ito yung ating assumption at ito yung ating P then Q statement that assumed to be true. Now let's have another conditional statement and see kung ano yung magiging conclusion natin mula dito using the law of detachment. At according to our example, Leo got an A on his final exam. So, he will pass the course. So, ito ba ay matatawag nating valid conditional statement gamit ang law of detachment? Now, tingnan natin. Yung ating hypothesis, sabi dito, if any student gets an A on a final exam, ang ating conclusion is that the student will pass the course. Now, assuming na true yung ating statement, therefore, yung ating hypothesis ay true then at yung ating main conditional statement na Q, which is our conclusion, sabi dito yung conclusion, the student will pass the course. And in our example, si Leo, nakakuha siya ng A or 92% sa kanyang final exam at ang conclusion niya is that so he will pass the course. So that means, since ang ating hypothesis is that lahat ng merong A sa final exam or ang lahat ng students who gets an A in the final exam will pass the course. So, true statement, yung ating example na Leo got an A on his final exam, so he will pass the course. Dahil yung ating conclusion ay also true dun sa ating main conditional statement. So yan yung paggamit ng law of detachment, which is somehow similar sa pag-verify whether ang ating conditional statement ay true or false. Again, paano nagiging true or false ang ating conditional statement? Kapag meron tayong counter-example na magbibigay ng true statement sa ating hypothesis, pero ang conclusion ay false, then yung ating statement ay false. At meron tayong lesson yan from our previous video na pwede niyong balikan para sa ating review material. So this particular argument or this particular conditional statement is said to be valid dahil na-prove natin using law of detachment na yung ating conclusion ay true. Now, let's have another example. And in this case, ang ating main conditional statement is that if two angles are adjacent, then they share a common vertex. Yan yung ating main conditional statement at yung ating example na statement from that conditional statement is that angle 1 and angle 2 share a common vertex. So the angles are adjacent. So in this case, ipoprove natin kung ang ating example ay valid conditional statement or true statement base doon sa ating assumption na if two angles are adjacent, which is our hypothesis, then they share a common vertex, which is our conclusion. So ito yung ating P then Q statement. At kung titingnan natin yung example natin, let's see kung makakakuha tayo ng counter-example na kung saan yung ating hypothesis ay true, pero ang conclusion ay false. So ito yung ating diagram at makikita natin na yung angle 1 and angle 2 dito ay adjacent at meron din siyang common vertex. So magkalapit si angle 1 at si angle 2 and they share a common vertex. At ito yung kanyang vertex dahil ito yung ating central angle. Pero ang ating assumption is that if two angles are adjacent, then they share a common vertex. And let's see if this is a valid conditional statement using law of detachment. Dahil, what if si angle 2 ay dito nakapwesto? Mapapansin natin na yung conclusion natin na meron silang common vertex, it still holds true, pero yung ating counter-example dito, yung hypothesis natin ay hindi na totoo or hindi na kaparehas ng ating main conditional statement. So in this case, we can argue na yung ating statement na example or yung example na angle 1 and angle 2 share a common vertex, so the angles are adjacent, is not a valid argument for a true conditional statement. So yung ginamit nating way on how to analyze this statement is ang tinatawag nating law of detachment. At yan yung ating lesson on law of detachment. Kaya ang ating Numberbender challenge for the day is kung if a number is prime, then it has exactly 2 factors. At yung ating example statement is that the number 11 is prime. Now, using law of deduction, do you think that this argument is valid? So, dito nyo papracticein yung ating reasoning skill or being able to use mathematical thinking on how to prove if our sample or our example statement is valid according to the law of detachment. At yan yung ating lesson for today on deductive reasoning. At alam na natin ngayon ang difference ng inductive at deductive reasoning. Again, ang inductive reasoning, it's based out of patterns, and then we can arrive to a conclusion based on ating mga patterns na tinatawag nating conjecture. Pero pagdating sa deductive reasoning, yung ating conclusion ay base sa ating mga statements na valid, and doon tayo makaka-arrive sa ating conclusion. And tandaan natin na kapag gumamit tayo ng deductive reasoning, yung conclusion natin ay nagiging theorem. This is Dr. E, and see you again next time. Bye!